Welcome to Yoga of Recovery, Healing Habits That Bind. Fifth tenet, life is love. Here's the session questions for this section on life is love. So if you want to take a picture of them or write them down so you can pay particular attention when I speak about it in the coming slides. What we're looking at now is, again, following the thread of the story that we have it, we are spirit, embodied, dependent upon prana, therefore dependent upon people. And that's given us life is longing, life is prana, life is relationship. Then we looked at that first food, milk, it's sweet, brings us to life is sweet. And we discussed the fact that of the 6 tastes, that the elemental combination of the sweet taste being earth and water makes it physically the most building and most nourishing of the tastes. So the purpose of the food from Mother Nature is our embodiment, and the sweet taste, more than any other taste, builds the substance of body, the tissues. It supports the physical embodiment of our spirit in this embodied reality. And in Ayurveda, what is said is each taste has a physical effect, but it also has a psychological effect. And so this tenet, the fifth tenet, relates to the psychology of taste. That's what brings us to this tenet that sweet taste represents love. And I'm able to understand that you know that, because if I ask you to sing me a love song, or I listen to you speak to people who you love, you have fondness and affection for, then you're going to use the language of sweetness. So it's my sweetheart, it's my sugar pie, honey punch, sweet love, all of those phrases. If you listen to love songs, you can just smile as you hear all those references to sweetness. So again, we've said that most psychological problems are based upon a lack of love and devotion. And it's interesting because Ayurveda says that forgetting our true nature is the primordial cause of disease. It's going all the way back to Life is Longing, when we looked at what's the holistic view of disease, after we'd given some time to looking at the Western medical model and its varying perspectives on the diagnosis of disease, especially addiction. And there was a time when I was studying a book called Attitudinal Healing by Gerald Jampolsky in a local spiritual drop-in community center. And as I was reading that book, I noticed something in the book that struck me, and this is where I'm sharing now. So the question that came from the book that I read was, is love forgiving or is love forgetting? The idea that we could go out into the world and get love from the other. But if you see that the forgetting is part of that primordial cause of disease, that idea that we're forgetting our true nature, it's the spiritual aspect, the ignorance. And we could say then that our true nature is love. So we usually say our true nature is spirit, but here we can say our true nature is love. And when we're in that habitual self-forgetfulness of our essential nature being love, then we warp things by trying to move out into our world to get love. So forgetting is again a problem. Forgiving, that's not a problem, because that's us coming from the true essence of who we are. So again, we're all the way back to the fundamental cause of disease. It takes us to this fifth tenet, life is love. And obviously we point to forgiveness, just playing on those words of love is forgiving, not forgetting. And again, we go back to Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga, because Bhakti is known as the yoga of love, yoga of devotion. And karma yoga is known as the yoga of service. And it is said that what you serve, you love, and what you love, you serve. The seeking aspect I've named as seeking true power. So again, the power of the universe is love. It is the cohesive factor behind all that is. So for life is love, we're seeking true power. And in this, as we unpack the life is love tenet, we come to aspects of forgiveness, of ritual, and of creating time and space, sacred time and space. We look at also what we started with the discussion here, food is mood. In this session, I want to focus on forgiveness. So again, those questions, is love forgiving or is love forgetting? And we usually launch into this discussion by saying, who do you need to be? How do you have to look? What do you have to go out and get love in the world? So if you can take a few moments and think about that, just the general idea, your own personal ideas, and then the cultural ideas that you receive from, the advertising, the media messages. Who do you need to be? How do you have to look? What do you have to be the successful person that's going to go out into society and get love from other people? And as you can see, I've given you an indication with this picture, which I thought was very amusing to see this media advertising idea of very slick, hip and cool people in the ultimate theatricals of a beach wedding with all the finery on, and the sunglasses, and looking very cool. So I'm talking about this cultural influence that a lot of us have. So again, we talked about forgetting our true nature. And so we are in this idea of what is needed is forgiveness, because we are coming around to this idea that love is forgiving. So then that leads us to these questions. Who needs to be forgiven? And for what do they need to be forgiven? Who needs to be forgiven and for what? And generally, when you think at the level that we're looking at this at, of our own spirit embodied in that fundamental cause of disease and the habitual self-forgetfulness, the spiritual ignorance, forgetting our true nature, or the spiritual malady mentioned by the 12 steps, then what we come to is the forgiveness is who needs to be forgiven is our own self. And for what? We need to forgive ourselves for forgetting. We need to forgive ourselves for the ignorance of our true nature. And ideally, we need to set up a life of daily remembrance of our deeper inner nature, the consciousness behind us and behind all that is around us, other people, sentient beings, the whole planet. When we speak of this, I'm making a few book recommendations. These are there's lots and lots of books on forgiveness. These are two that I found sort of practical. The first one, Forgive for Good by Fred Luskin, who runs a forgiveness project out of Stanford University. And another book, Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping, who's now passed. And that was another book that I did a book study on in the same spiritual drop-in center. And it was a good one. And what I liked about it, a lot like the work of the Byron Katie the work by Byron Katie that we mentioned in the Life is Longing tenet. Is it true? How do we know it's true? Is that they have these worksheets available online. So Colin Tipping has a radical forgiveness, and also I think it's called a radical acceptance worksheet. And you can go to that website, radicalforgiveness.com, and then you can work through one of those. And if that doesn't seem something that you really want to do on your own, then I have this contact of a very good long-term friend of mine who works in this field, and her name is Dinny Evans, and she is a radical forgiveness coach along with many other things that she's studied over the decades. And her email is dinny@forgivecoach.com. So you could be in touch with her and let her know that you're coming from Yoga of Recovery, and that she says maybe you'll do a session 2 or 3 and you should be through with it, to really have you move on from this, where we maybe have grudges and resentments and things that we're holding on to that we can't quite let go of. So you can either try that in the worksheets yourself, or you can work through the worksheet and then go and have a discussion with a trained person about that. So here's the session questions. Life is love. The 5th tenet. The psychological aspect of the sweet taste. Thank you.